Well, hey everybody. How's it going? This is Justin 204 Vegan with Right Side Vegan News here with Swam. So we're just going to be going over some current events and some other events that are going on throughout the world, and give you like a different perspective of what I'm seeing in the news and what I've been experiencing with the latest restrictions in Manitoba and the stuff that's been going on here with our code red and only being able to buy essentials, and certain things are only available to purchase. How they've shut down churches and not even allowing drive-in ceremonies. People can't even exercise, any kind of rights, never mind the simple right of going to church, whether you believe in that kind of stuff or not. I mean, people still need to be out there and having that community and family and working together. So we're going to go over some of the things that have been going on. Giving you a little disclaimer, by any way, if I talk about any legal advice or legal stuff, I'm not a lawyer, so I can't, look into it for yourself, do your own research. But I'll give you what I've learned and my perspective on it. And hopefully I can give you guys some good information. So let's see, about a week ago now, we had it was a Wednesday afternoon. We had the local gang squad of Brian Pallister's goons come over and pounding on our door for about 10 minutes. And they're loud enough that it was making my kids uncomfortable. And so eventually, I ended up confronting them and going downstairs and talking to these guys about what they were doing here. So we'll start it off just with a little clip from what happened on the Wednesday. So if Andy can just throw that first clip up, the one before that one, when they're at the door. Sorry. And then we'll go to that one right after. So we had these people approach our door after the Steinbach Freedom Rally. Oh, close. And basically telling us that we're not allowed to exercise our rights to gather and protest. Here we go.
I am a sovereign citizen. You're trespassing. Here's the sign. You're trespassing. Get off my property. Give me a photo ID. I don't know who you are. You could be robbing me. I want to see a photo ID. Photo ID. You could be, no, that's not ID. Anybody can order a badge over the internet. Anybody can order a badge over the internet. That guy's got a bunch of tattoos. What are you guys, a gang? That guy has tattoos. He's a criminal. I want to see a photo ID. I don't consent. I don't consent.
Savannah, throw me a towel.
I don't consent. Give me a photo ID. Get off my property. Give me a photo ID. Get off my property. You're trespassing. I've warned you. I'm calling the police. No, you're trespassing. Get off my property. I want photo ID. Give me a photo ID. No, give me a photo ID. Photo ID. Photo ID.
Don't touch my fucking door.
You're all being charged. You trespassed.
So that's basically what I was doing there, was trying to get photo identification of the the four people who apprehended my door. They did not produce a photo identification. If we look at like Manitoba Hydro, if we look at the meter readers in the city for water, anybody who comes to your door has photo identification to prove which service they work for and what they're doing. The fact that these guys couldn't produce photo identification is rather worrisome. That badge didn't have anything besides some gold like it was just gold with blue on it. Didn't have any insignias, not a number, no nothing. It just looked like a plain standard badge that anybody could order. If we look at like you know, any real badge in the States or anything like that, they have the badge numbers, they have things on them, they've got some sort of insignia. This didn't have any insignia. So that's why I press these gentlemen for proper photo identification, because if you are not willing to enter a contract with them and they are trespassing, you know, from what I understand, you know, it's technically illegal to do what they're doing. Especially the fact that these aren't even written into law. They're not signed by a judge. They haven't been, you know, this is a public health person who's no different than a bylaw officer. So the fact that these people are using these kind of tactics is rather worrisome. It's very similar tactics to a private security squad, or if you want to look at like, you know, in history when we had the Gestapo and stuff like that. You know, it's super, super similar to that kind of stuff. Anyone who comes to your door should be able to produce photo identification, and if they're not, then really, what are they trying to hide? So what shortly what happened after that is we, my wife took the ticket and we put the ticket into the lady's vehicle, and we didn't accept the ticket. One of the guys brought the ticket onto our front lawn, and then we took the ticket, and when we went to put it back into the other guy's vehicle, and then this happened. And you can throw that last 7-second clip up.
Give me your name.
You didn't give us your fucking identification. Don't touch me.
Don't touch my wife.
So as you can see there, my wife threw the ticket into the vehicle, and you know, in showing the point that these people, you know, don't know what they're doing. He touched her when he shouldn't have touched her. He had no business touching my wife. It's not against the law to throw a piece of paper in somebody's car, which we ended up going and speaking with the RCMP officers after, because we realized that we can't fight the ticket unless we have the ticket. So what we did was my wife had gone to get to follow these people, and she followed them, and they ended up going to the RCMP station. And she confronted an officer and asked the officer to help her and say that, you know, these gentlemen and this one woman approached our house, didn't give us any sort of name, photo ID, or any kind of identification. As you know, on the tickets, they just have a scribble. They don't have a name on them. So you can't really do anything without a photo identification of the person. And if you can take a photo of it at the time, so you have it on you like an actual hard copy, you can use this stuff to your, you know, to your advantage in court as well, because, you know, they're doing things without proper authority, and you know, they're not actual police officers, and these are not actual, you know, in their eyes, they say it's a public health order, but public health order does not go trumping the Constitution. So we got the RCMP officer to assist us, and he was able to get a business card for the public health officer, and only the public health officer. He was not able to get us identification for other people. In doing so, that tells me they were not public health officers. They clearly were not RCMP officers, because if they were RCMP officers, we know how they would have dressed. Their jackets did say Manitoba Justice, but what's Manitoba Justice? I mean, that's just a jacket. If they were sheriffs, they'd be dressed in sheriff gear. If anybody's been to the law courts building, you know how sheriffs dress. They dress in brown suits and brown uniforms. They have marked vehicles. These were unmarked cars with well, as you see, one was a veteran license plate, one was a normal license plate. These people weren't driving government vehicles. They're driving personal vehicles. So that really makes me think, like, are these people, are they actual Manitoba Justice? Have they just been given Manitoba Justice jackets? We don't know, because they won't produce identification. So in having the RCMP look at that, we showed him the footage, and he told us there was no reason for that man to touch and grab my wife's bicep. What she did wasn't illegal. He had no business to touch her. So we're dealing it with them, and there's going to be a record of that incident now with that gentleman. And you know, he could be facing repercussions if he gets physical with another person at one of these events, because if he has no business touching anybody in the name of a public health order. He's not an RCMP. He's not a sworn police officer. And in my eyes, this could be one of these G4S people, because they were rather suspicious looking in my eyes. So so that's why I say that everybody should look at always, if you do have somebody, these public health people approach you, ask for photo identification. Don't just accept the ticket. Say, no, I don't enter into the contract with you, because what you're doing is you're receiving a contract, and they're expecting you to fulfill the contract. This is what I'm starting to learn about common law and stuff. This is why I say I'm not a lawyer, but I mean, I'm learning about this stuff because I think these are what we need to be looking into as sovereign citizens in a country where our government has failed us and is basically committing an act of treason on the people. And we as the people have the right to call our governments out as elected officials on what they're doing, and really hold them accountable for their actions. If we look at what's happening in other places across Canada right now, in Toronto, we see Adam Skelly being arrested for like the last 2 nights in a row. He was in jail last night again. He was supposed to be on John B. Wells' radio show out of Texas, and they couldn't get him on because he was arrested again. So we start to look at who's enforcing these rules, and they're not by a judge, and that's really scary because the judge is the one who signs a warrant for a drug bust. The judge is the one that signs who gets custody of children. It's not a public health officer. So these are things people need to think of. So if you do get one of these tickets, try and get as much identification. Refuse to enter in a contract, and if they leave this ticket on your property, that technically is littering, which can be a $5,000 ticket, which you can turn around and charge them with if you have their identity in civil law. And these are all things people can represent themselves for. And generally, if you learn these things, you can do good with fighting for your rights as sovereign citizens in a province where our government has failed us. So that's where I'm going with that stuff. There's one more clip that I think is really important that we'll share right away too, about medical exemptions. A lot of people have been hearing and been told there is no such thing as medical exemptions. But this is right from Mr. Roussen's mouth about medical exemptions and how they do exist. And also, if we pay attention to the coldness of these two individuals who really just don't seem to realize the trouble they're causing, mental health, the trouble they're causing people as they're being discriminated going to grocery shopping. And basically any store you go to now, you get a funny look if you're not one of the maskers. And you can almost count, you'll be counting how many times you're asked to put on a mask. And if you are a person with a disability, that's very dehumanizing, and it's disheartening that they keep doing this to people, or the fact that we force people to wear masks who shouldn't be wearing masks and are causing them breathing difficulties, or it could cause them to have a panic attack, pass out. People don't realize there's so many medical conditions that don't have to be identifiable by your eyesight, that affects you from being able to wear the mask. So Andy, we'll throw that one more clip up there, and then I'll do some screen sharing.
Can you clarify for the public that some people do have medical exemptions and need them and should not be stigmatized? Because I have a gentleman here in Brandon who I'm writing a story with. He has severe asthma. He talks about being discriminated against. He's scared walking into a store. He's had threats that the RCMP would be called on him. He says, and to quote, "It's been very difficult and very dehumanizing, and my mental health has definitely suffered." So what do you have to say about this and to the public?
So there are exemptions to the requirements to wear masks, and some of them are medical conditions. I would say that the vast majority of Manitobans are able to wear a mask, and the exemptions don't include being uncomfortable or a nuisance. They are very specific exemptions. But it is absolutely true. There are some Manitobans that are unable to wear a mask. And the messaging that we've said, I think early on the first wave is be kind, right? Like we really are all in this together. We've had episodes of groups being stigmatized right from the beginning, and we know that's what happens during crises. is we look to stigmatize, we can look to be unkind to others, and that's not going to help us with COVID. So everyone do their part. There are some members of our province are unable to wear masks, but no one should be entering into a crowded place. One should be distanced, and everyone should be going out just for essential reasons right now. And so if we work together on that, we're gonna start seeing these numbers come down.
From CJOB.
Yeah. And it's very shocking we hear nothing from Mr. Pallister on that. He was so quick to apologize to a swim team that he mislabeled, but somebody who's actually going through some difficult situations where there's serious discrimination because of their decisions that they've made, and not properly educating the public on people with disabilities. Like, I couldn't imagine if you were had to do sign language all the time when you rely on facial cues. Like, I can imagine people don't think about like these different things that people really are going through right now with these choices our government has made. So I'm going to try screen sharing and see how this works. That worked? No, it didn't. Screen. Okay. Not sure why that's not working. Yeah, so just give me a second here.
The screen share is right in the bottom.
Yeah, it's saying I gotta
And you have to pick a window.
I got a preference or something going on here, security preference.
Oh.
Click to make changes. 1 second, everybody. First time doing this. Firefox.
Oh, your browser preferences. Yeah, that might be on your end then. Yeah.
If this kicks me off and I have to restart,
I will be here and I will do a little dance for the people. Don't worry.
Okay, thanks, bud.
We won't crash the thing. Well, everybody, you can see we are a live broadcasting platform, and this is a brand new show. I hope everyone's enjoying so far. I think Justin's doing an excellent job presenting a very fascinating and personal story, and then giving some wider perspective as well on just what it means for the whole province and what the leaders up there are trying to kind of put past people in a lot of ways, if you ask me. So we really appreciate here at WHAM, we really appreciate him coming forward, not only to tell his story, but just to contribute to the team in general. It's really important work, and that's why we're encouraging going forward. Especially, we've encouraged it a little bit, but we're going to keep trying pushing forward with encouraging people to go out and if you see something, what's the old adage? See something, say something. Well, if you see something, get it on video and reach out to Winnipeg Alternative Media. We might not need to put your face on the screen if you don't want us to, but we can certainly get citizen journalism out there and raise awareness for what's going on in the province. Todd's in, though. Hi, Todd.
Hey, everybody. Yeah, hope you're enjoying Justin's debut episode. I sure know that I am. Too bad he had a little bit of difficulty there with the screen share, but I'm sure we'll all get it figured out right away. It's I love being able to see a video like the one he shared already of somebody directly involved in the lawfare that's being thrown around to people all over the country and beyond, but of course we're talking about what we know is happening here in Manitoba. The lawfare of being ticketed for all different kinds of things that have to do with public health order. This is an ongoing situation that continues to beg on the questions of, how much, how important, is that enforcement, as far as just your own free will goes, to say go attend a church service in a parking lot, or hold a church service for people in a parking lot, and that kind of thing, where that video from Justin, saying to the officers that, or possible officer, that,
Oh boy.
here's the problem with what you're doing, is of course not only do I not know who you are, or do I have no reason to trust you, but like, how dare you be at my place like 4 or 5 or 6 strong to serve me a ticket and need to like come and and engage in a process like that.
It's intimidation too.
When you're talking about an extraordinarily non-violent, non-aggressive act. I mean, it's just beyond me. I mean, usually, you think about the law and the people who are supposed to uphold the law. You think about, situations where, and I know this is where everybody would tell me, right? No, but this is, people's lives are at stake here. You guys are the super spreaders, so on and so forth. None of that has any grounding in reality or supposed science or whatever. I mean, these people have all been now checked out. They've been ticketed. They've been visited, so on and so forth. And none of them, obviously, because of what they're out there in the world saying, clearly none of them have problems in their life of everybody that they know, and their maybe possible loved ones that are elderly as well too, all dying from anything all of a sudden. I mean, like, that's like, there's nothing to trace any of these actions back to being that detrimental. So having people at your door doing this is really, of course, a very ongoing, shocking reality. And so the video from Justin facing that like he did is, I think, just an incredible thing. And because of the way he handled that, of course, even a more incredible thing to have him, live with us and a member of Winnipeg Alternative Media. So yeah, let's get it back to Justin if he's ready to go. And by all means,
Give me 2 more seconds if you can. Can you just give me 2
absolutely,
seconds? I have to read to get all things open.
We're a team here, so we can step into assist that, whenever you need, man. That's what it's all about. So yeah, no, it's great. And as some of you might have caught last night, if you watched my thing with Beth Martins, where apparently I was having a bunch of audio issues, which I think I figured out by now. Hopefully that's not an ongoing situation. We have invited Beth Martins to be a part of the Winnipeg Alternative Media team as well too. So we're working with her to have her broadcasting, on this platform as well, sometime maybe within the next week or so. Looking forward to that. Myself tomorrow night, planting seeds for Prairie Truth, episode number 128, I believe. Yes, 128. Or is it 129? Shoot.
I think it's 129 now.
It is 129. You're right. It is. It is
earlier. Now I don't remember.
No. I think it is. Yeah. Episode. I'm glad I asked. Episode number 129 with Daniel Boardman again, who was on with us just about a month ago, from Uninterrupted with Daniel Boardman out in Toronto, doing incredible work out there, and involved in some pretty interesting things himself that goes a little beyond his work as an alternative media independent broadcaster. So we're going to have him back on. Looking forward to that. And we're also going to have on, and this, of course, as far as being a fellow Manitoban goes, this is really the big one. I can't wait. We will have Tobias, Pastor Tobias, on as well too, from the Church of God, to discuss his feelings on what's unraveling in front of him, to discuss what's going to be happening once again this Sunday. So you're going to hear it here first, everybody. Winnipeg Alternative Media exclusive. That a lot of you saw the footage and what even ourselves were able to get from the Church of God service from this past Sunday. And Pastor Tobias has decided to do the same thing again. And you will get the the full story, the full information on why he's doing that and what that means from his mouth here on Winnipeg Alternative Media tomorrow night. Planting Seeds for Prairie Truth, episode number 129, starting at 8 p.m. tomorrow night, and greatly looking forward to those conversations. We might even be able to get a third guest on as well too. There's a few people I'm talking to right now, so the show might continue to grow. But anyhow,
alrighty, I'm good, guys.
There we go. Justin's all ready to go. So of course, hope everybody's enjoying Justin's debut episode here with us at Winnipeg Alternative Media. Already loved the first 20 minutes there, and everybody, of course, we'll throw it back to Justin.
All right, guys. Thanks, guys, for filling in for that second there. I think we got the privacy stuff figured out.
I'm gonna pop off, but I'll bring back on if there's any technical difficulty. So take it away, Justin.
Thanks, guys. So yeah, we'll try the screen share thing again here. Okay, should be good. Okay, so I guess you got my face in there too now. Oh, I need that. So yeah, we are going to go through some stats here. So, I thought this was a very interesting chart here. Basically shows the weekly death counts in Canada. So we can kind of see some interesting things going on from this this graph that kind of goes into what we're dealing with right now with the pandemic, whatever you want to say. So we can see here for all of Canada that things are pretty level. You see the spike here we had in April, which is obviously concerning, which is clearly some sort of virus that we did have. That is, I'm not denying that there is a virus. I do think there's something, but I don't think it's any worse than a normal seasonal cold. So what's interesting from this graph, if you know a lot about statistics, you can tell that just by the way they've made this graph, by having it starting at 45 and going to 65, if you were to actually lay this out from 0 to like 10,000, you would see that this would be actually a very flat curve. It wouldn't, you wouldn't see much of this big dip here. So what's interesting to see here in 2014, we had roughly 6,200 deaths. So, we're really not that far from, an extra 300 deaths. So, it's something to put into perspective on what's really going on with the statistics and the way the media is portraying everything. And then we can even go back to 2018, which is what I spoke about on my first video that got pulled down from YouTube. The 2018 flu season was one of the worst flu seasons we had. And even we can see here just from the Canadian statistics, even that all ages, this was one of the worst flu seasons we had, which is we're at 6630, and our highest was 67. So we're within 100, with 120-ish, 110, 15. So that's really surprising to see for something that has shut everything down. That's shut churches down. That's caused, let's see, for Manitoba alone, $400,000 in fines since April to be handed out, and now that number is steadily climbing with these steep fines that are being handed out across Canada, and Manitoba alone. Manitoba seems to have the strictest stuff going on. So we can take this chart here and we can go, because generally people under 44 years old aren't going to have as many comorbidities, and they're generally going to be a healthier person. So, if we choose the ages 45 to 64, we'll start to see that this chart really did something interesting, and it really kind of leveled out even more. And it's, we're seeing the same spike here back in 2018 that really affected people 45 to 65. Which really puts into perspective when we go to 2020 of May here, which was, the highest point for this age range. This is your, fathers and maybe some grandfathers. It's something interesting to see. And then we even go down to here, we can see that this number has even dropped just significantly. When we go to the 65 to 84, we'll see that the number really spikes here. This was the age range they always said was affected, and we can see that this age range was really affected. But going back to 2018, is it as bad to shut the whole economy down, bring reduce essential goods so our kids can't even go and pick or show us the presents they want to get from the store, or even pick a nice outfit out for Christmas? Because that's something I'm seeing. They're selecting which kind of clothing is okay to buy. When we're looking at a difference of like 30 people, it's disheartening to see that. And we can do this chart and go through this chart, and you can check all your provinces out so you can see what's going on. You can see that generally when we go through this graph, that you're going to see that we had worse things in past times that are worse than this, that we didn't have to mandatory mask, cause thousands of dollars in fines, addictions, drug abuse, all the stuff. So very interesting graph. I'm going to be putting these links in the Discord for everybody for them to check them out on their own. So yeah, check that Discord out and go from there. Check this stuff out, question everything, and always look into the facts more. Why isn't the media looking into this? This is an interesting paper I found. It's from 2009. October 1st was the study that was done. The study is basically checking out bacterial pneumonia and the cause of death in pandemic influenzas and implications in pandemic influenza preparedness. So it's really interesting that they were already studying this in 2009. They looked at the 4 different pandemics that have occurred over 120 years and, associated with influenza and pandemics, the cause of death. So they looked at the Spanish flu, which is a good data point to look at. And what we can look at here is, the conclusion that majority deaths in 1818 were likely result directly from secondary bacterial pneumonia caused by upper respiratory tract bacteria. Less substantial data from the subsequent 57 to 68 pandemics consisted with these findings as well. In severe pandemic influenzas, the largest problem of viral bacterial pathogenesis pandemic planning needs to go beyond addressing viral causes alone. Influenza vaccines and antiviral drugs. So obviously everyone's worried about this word right now, but antiviral drugs, those are what are really important. The remdesivir, the hydroxychloroquines, the zinc, vitamin C, vitamin D. These are all proven in different places in the world to have amazing effects on these kind of respiratory illnesses. So yeah, prevention, diagnosis of secondary bacterial pneumonia, and stockpiling antibiotics, and leave the vaccines and go for more of the antiviral drugs. So I thought that was a very interesting thing. So it's basically showing that it's not really the flu; it's the pneumonia you get after. And if we look at what's going on right now, that's what we're seeing a lot from what the doctors are saying, even in Manitoba, that people are they're recovering from the COVID, but then they have this pneumonia, and because they've been intubated, that they have a harder time recovering. So going back to the Steinbach Church thing. I had one more article, but I can't find it right now, and I kind of messed some things up. So we'll talk about the mask thing later. And the interesting thing is that, if we're not careful with how we're covering up our faces and properly discarding of these masks, or even reusing them, or even washing them properly. A lot of people don't consider, at home washing them. A lot of people like cold water and stuff. Cold water is not going to help kill any viral bacteria that's on these things, right? So, we need to, if we look at there's some research papers I wasn't able to get up right away that talk about how hospital dryers, they get up to 70 degrees Fahrenheit to kill pathogens on the hospital linens and stuff that are soiled. So, you know, a lot of people's at-home dryers, I don't know if they get up to those kind of temperatures that are enough to kill those pathogens. But yeah, going back to this thing that happened here on Sunday with the churches. Yeah, this was kind of really disheartening to see what the RCMP did here. They kind of committed an act, a criminal offense by having the Harold Legini, the chief in Steinbach, do this and use the RCMP to barricade the highway, because it's actually a crime under section 176 here in the criminal code. Every person is guilty of an indictable offense or liable for imprisonment for a term of more than 2 years, or guilty of an offense punishable on a summary conviction, who threats of force, unlawful obstruction or prevent endeavors to obstruct or prevent or an officiant from celebrating a religious or spiritual service or performing any other function in connection with their calling, or knowing that an officiant is about to perform, is on their way to perform, or is returning from the performance of any of these duties or functions mentioned in paragraph A. Assault or offers any violence to them, arrests them, or civil process. So civil process to me would be what they're doing with these tickets. I'm not sure, maybe not, but I mean, or proceed, or under the pretense of excluding a civil process. So disturbing religious worship or certain means. Everyone who's willingly disturbs or interrupts an assembly of a person met for religious worship or moral, social, and not sure about that word, benevolent purpose, is guilty of an offense punishable by a summary conviction. So this is basically what the RCMP officers committed on Sunday. And I think they should be held accountable. The way we can hold them accountable is by filing out a civil review and commission's complaint form. So basically, the RCMP officer on duty would be Harold Legini, the sergeant, whoever, I'm not sure if they call him the sergeant, the commanding officer of Steinbach. The incident occurred within 12 months, yes. We were all witness to this incident. If you were directly involved in this incident, you can go too, or you can act on someone's behalf. You basically fill this form out. I filled these out before. I've held RCMP accountable. Being a vegan activist, you can imagine standing outside slaughterhouses or doing some of the actions we do. We get pressed by security or even RCMP officers that don't want us there, or the business doesn't want us there, and they try to use the RCMP to push us off or keep us on public property or inform us of what the public property is. So in doing that, sometimes RCMP officers overstep their grounds. They say things that they shouldn't have. And being an activist, when I do my activism, is I carry a body camera and I record the whole action, the whole event. So I make sure I catch everything, the security, RCMP officer, the pedestrian. You know, if you want to make vile comments towards us, you know, we can hold you accountable. You know, in this day and age, when we can walk around with body cameras that are shock-proof and have a timestamp and a date stamp and all this stuff, you can start to really hold people accountable for these actions. So in doing my vegan actions and vegan activism, I've learned that, and that's why I'm transitioning and trying to help my fellow activists that are fighting for freedom, because freedom is so important, where I can't even perform my, you know, my vegan outreach, help educate the public about, you know, my experiences in the factory farming industry, my short time as in different factory farming areas and working at a slaughterhouse too. So I can't share my experiences until I have my freedoms back. And, you know, until we get our freedoms back, like even being able to worship our religious service, depending whatever your faith is, even if you're not even a big faith person, Yoga can be religious. That can be Zen for some people. That can be their calming point. So what everybody can do that witnessed the event on Sunday or any other infractions on churches, you can get the attending officers' names or badge numbers, or you can hold the commanding officer accountable for sending his officers on duty for this. I think that's what we can do, and this is a private entity who will look into this, and they will hold. They will have private lawyers look into this, and then they will hold the RCMP accountable for their actions, and they may be reprimanded, or they may have to even apologize for their actions. So that's some very valuable information for anybody who didn't know that it's easy to do. It's a simple form. You fill this form out, send it off, and then somebody will contact you, I'm sure. And it's a very easy process, and it's all confidential. They're not going to know in the end unless you choose to get an apology, really what's going on. But I mean, these RCMP officers swore an oath. They are to the Queen. I've looked into their oath. They pledge allegiance. They are Royal Mounted Police of the Commonwealth, and they have to abide by the Constitution and enforce it properly. And if not, they are committing an act of, in this case, a criminal code violation of 176. Which clearly is very severe, can be indictable offense for an imprisonment of 2 years. There is an imprisonment term of no more than 2 years. So, I mean, this is a very disturbing thing. And we're going to see that the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms is going to be holding Brian Callister accountable for his an injunction. So this was released today. The Winnipeg, the Justice Center has issued a warning letter to the Premier for violating the Charter freedoms of faith communities and Manitobans, and declaring religious services not be allowed under the public health order. Violates the fundamental freedoms in religious and peaceful assembly, which we saw there. The Brian Pallister has 2 days to reverse this decision, or the Justice Center will file an injunction to prevent the continual enforcement of fining tickets against churchgoers. Various Manitoba churches have attempted to have drive-in services under the public health order to be shut down, to have them shut down on November 22nd. These churches have been careful in following the guidelines of social distancing and planning under church services, the same format as a drive-in movie. Church worshippers are to stay in their vehicles and listen to the service and participate in religious service via the radio. So yeah, you can basically see that the JCC here is really going to be holding them accountable. Brent Rusin believes that drive-in services violate the latest public health orders. Whenever you're gathering in a large amount of people in the same manner for prolonged periods, time then you look at the other parts. I mean, it's crazy. You can go to a drive-in, fast food joint, get some food. It's not an issue. So yeah, and here's another good quote at the end. The COVID-19 pandemic does not suspend the protection of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms or the rights of Canadians. The restrictions of public and religious gatherings in which people exclusively occupy their personal vehicles on a parking lot while worshiping is irrational, unnecessary, and not a minimal impairment of the Charter of Rights. So yeah, we're going to see, hopefully this happens. I don't see in 2 days them changing this. So hopefully this happens and the injunction happens. Like I said, I'll share all these in the Discord. They did one more here on the 30th, basically explaining how the Manitoba lockdown violate the Charter, legal analysis. I'm not going to read it because I'm not the best reader, but basically if you find this article, you can use this to your advantage for any of your tickets, whether you're going to fight it on your own or fight it with a lawyer, or even if you have a lawyer that's humming and hawing about if it's a violation of the Charter. As we saw with a few articles, they're using law professors to inform the public that the public health order trumps the charter. When, you know, how can we have a law professor go and explain these things to people when they're not even practicing law? So yeah, it's a very interesting article. Some of the main big points here that, you know, I like to point out is the fact that, you know, what they say here with the hospitalizations and the ICU beds. They seem to keep forgetting that in November that the Manitoba government and WRHA stated that they were able to expand up to 173 beds. And, you know, when we look at that, you know, that's crazy because we only have 44 people in the ICU right now with ICU beds at 93 and being able to expand to 173. So what's the real problem here? You know, is it the fact that he fired all the nurses there in 2018 and cut everybody short? I don't know. But the simple fact is we have the beds. We have the beds. That's for sure. We know that we have the beds. So yeah, that's kind of what I got for what's going on with the COVID stuff right now with this stuff. I should probably even not even say that word. It's probably going to get stream hurt. But yeah, it's very important that everybody thinks about these facts and looks into this stuff. This was an interesting thing that we saw here that was captured over CTV. We had the long-term case. They released a news story basically and shot themselves in the foot, saying that you know, the total deaths was this 10,905, and then they went and showed a clip saying that most of these deaths were in long-term care homes. You know, when you do that number, we get down to this. That's how many people who, you know, weren't in a long-term care home. And, you know, you average that between all the provinces and the major cities, and, you know, we're down to like 5, you know, a very small amount. So it was crazy to see how after this video was done, that it was clipped and shown on YouTube and different channels and different platforms. And then CTV went and cut this section out of their broadcast. So that's pretty crazy that they would actually go and hide it, because now we have the proof that they're hiding things. It's a good quote. You assist an evil system most effectively by obeying its orders and decrees, and an evil system never deserves such allegiance. Allegiances to its means partake of the evil. A good person will resist an evil system without his or her whole soul, or with his or her soul. Kind of butchered it a little bit, but you get the point. Muhammad Khan, you had some good words there. I like that quote for kind of what we're going through. Yeah, so I got another good article here I wanted to share with everybody before we get into some of the weather sciences that I want to talk about. You know, I don't know how much you guys follow about the American stuff or not, but I mean, I have family that lives down there, so I follow it a little bit. I got a kick out of this article here. Dear Joe Biden, are you kidding me? Aaron Brockovich. The president-elect has tapped a former DuPont consultant for his Environmental Protection Agency transition board. So the guy who talks about like saving the world and saving the environment, and you know, a lot of vegans really love this guy. A lot of vegans think this guy's the savior because he loves animals, and you know, he's just a hurrah. But this guy doesn't really care about the environment, as we can quickly find out if you want to do the research. So this is basically and I know I probably don't have too many vegans listening, but you know, it's all those vegans out there that claim Joe Biden's the savior for the environment and he's going to save the world. You know, this guy wants to end fossil fuel, you know, and use precious metals and minerals and resources that take way more, you know, effort and destroy more natural resources to make solar panels and wind turbines. But, you know, what does it say for the guy when he, you know, he wants to pick Michael McCabe, former employee of Joe Biden, for one, and former deputy of the EPA. You know, he was a consultant for DuPont during the last little while. and he's a big player in this new chemical called C8. And so C8 is a toxic chemical. I'm not even going to try to say its name, but basically it's the star chemical for like for waterproof clothes. Everybody's probably seen those things, right? You know, it's cool, it's waterproof clothes, but what chemicals are they putting to do this? That's what people don't think about. Stain resistant. Oh yeah, stain resistant. Hurrah, right? That's awesome. But what chemicals are you putting onto your skin? Food packaging. That's really disturbing. And nonstick pans. So this compound has been linked to lower fertility, cancer and liver damage. And The Guardian reported that this week the Harvard School Public Health Office professor warns that this chemical, which was one of the might reduce COVID effectiveness in the vaccine. So that's a very interesting thing too. So yeah, this C8 chemical is a very dangerous chemical where this guy wants to use a guy who really doesn't care about the environment. So this is basically a shot to all those environmentalists who don't seem to understand that no matter what these people tell you, they're lying to you. You know. So yeah, let's just go over a couple more points here. It pollutes the blood of the Native Americans and can pass from mother to unborn child. So yeah, that's pretty crazy. So the pollutants they've noticed in every American, and it can pass through an unborn child into the womb. So yeah, it's basically this chemical is super dangerous. So Michael McCabe, DuPont's communications person for with the EPA, and yeah. So basically, I'll share this link. We'll check it out. I'm not going to butcher all the big words, but you know, this is just an interesting thing that if we look at, you know, how much this chemical is used and how much waste and like, you know, how many times it's been dumped into irrigation, this 7,100 tons into 100,000 people's water. It's something to think about. So that's a little thought for all those people that think Joe Biden is going to be saving the world with environmental stuff. So I think not. I think it's just a way to get in power and to ruin the world. So I'd have to say Mr. Trump is going to have to clean house on the 14th or the 20th, and hopefully some people go to jail. So yeah, we're going to get into a little bit of weather stuff. I'm really into space weather and stuff like that. So we're going to talk a little bit about the Earth's magnetic field and the polar shift. Basically, when we see here with this picture here, this is the Earth, and we can see the magnetic pole and the geographical pole. They're two different spots, and then we can see these are the radiation belts that come out from the Earth. And all this stuff gets affected by the sun when it has a solar outburst. And you know, this is the magnetic poles and how they're switching. So as you can see over here, this is the North Pole, and we can see that these are the different polarities, and we can see that it's actually been shifting and moving towards Siberia. So the magnetic north used to be over here. I have it in another picture, and it starts to move and slowly moving towards Siberia. So it's really interesting when we look at these charts and graphs. But basically what we can see here is that the north is coming down, and it's coming down further, and we have the same thing happening with the south. So they're kind of all over the place, and it's all part of this thing called the grand solar minimum, which we're going to get into and talk a little about geomagnetic reversals and what they are and why you know, we've seen people change the narrative so many times, from global warming to climate change. You know, we hear these things change so much. So a geomagnetic reversal is the magnetic field in the planet's changing. Magnetic north and south are interchangeable, not to be confused with geographical north and south. The fields alternate between periods of normal polarity. So yeah, we'll see that it's a recurring pattern, and they do this stuff through ice cores and rock samples. And what you see is these different times. And when we go looking into this stuff, they use the ocean floor and the way volcanoes solidify the lava. Whenever that kind of stuff solidifies, the magnetic particles, the metal particles, they always point north. So as the fields shift, they don't always point in the same direction, and that's how they ended up figuring this stuff out. And the big thing about this stuff is it ends up leading to a catalysmic pole shift hypothesis. So like this hypothesis, this is kind of like a fringe theory because not a lot of people want to jump onto it because it's kind of well, it just shows you for what's really going on in our world. And the reason this is important is because you can end up seeing it through the rock layers. And if you know any geologists, I've been following one for the last 3 years, and that's where I've learned about a lot of this stuff. And you see it through time and time again, how things keep changing every 12,000 years. And so basically, yeah, it's a catalysmic pole shift hypothesis. And it basically talks about the pole shifting, which causes the growing seasons to change. And, things end up not happening the way they normally will. And, what we can end up seeing is if we look at even what's happened very recently with the weather, how we've been having, like today, how we have we've been having a lot warmer weather. The reason that's happening is because we have a mid-diurnal flow jet stream, and the jet stream's not flying straight anymore. It's going up and down, bringing snow all the way down to New Mexico and then bringing it all the way up. So how long does it take for the magnetic fields to reverse? National Science Foundation will give you different, what their information is, and they're going to tell you 7,000 years. But in science, you can find out that these things end up happening within 10 years, possibly. So that, when you do the research, you'll see conflicting things. And, that's when you have to go to the ice core samples and rock core samples to find out the actual information. So this is a really interesting showing the different cycles. And what we can end up seeing is that at 12,000 years, we have a recurring pattern all the time, where we have the Gothenburg, Mono Lake, Lachamp, Mungo. And what these are ice ages. And these are when, so basically when the magnetic reversal happens, is it causes the growing seasons to change, and it causes a reversal, and it causes glaciers to form and more rain, precipitation. And so this is going by ice core samples, and that's how you can find out those things. And if we go back to, there we go, oops, the CMP5 graph, and this graph is really important because this basically shows us where we are, and this shows us the cycles. So basically, this is what we're dealing with right now. We are right here, and we're in one of the lowest points in our history with sunspots and the solar decline. So as this grand solar minimum happens over 12,000 years, the sun starts to react differently, and it starts to have less sunspots. And when it has less sunspots, it starts to, when they do have the sunspots, they tend to be stronger. And what we're going to find is throughout these shows that I'm going to start doing is we're going to be showing the correlations between the sunspot cycles and solar flares. And how solar flares affect us is they affect our climate and our weather. And that is what affects these systems of ground solar minimum, because our magnetic field, as I showed you before, is actually weakening. And when it weakens, when it weakens, we tend to where's this? Basically stops here. When it weakens, we tend to oh, it didn't stop. There we go. Yeah, so when it weakens, what happens is it compresses the sun, or those magnetic lines that we had showing there before. And when those things get compressed, the solar flare, the cosmic rays end up coming down further. And what happens is when the sun gives off a solar outburst, is like happened the other day when we had an M-class flare. We had an M-class flare, and what that does is it affects your cell phones, it affects what internet, satellites. And if we were to get one of these flares shooting towards us on Earth, it would cause basically the satellites to stop working. It could cause them to basically, I guess you could say, basically, well, start to degrade or fall out of the sky. So yeah, it's very important that we follow these things. And another interesting thing is that a lot of the stuff was all proven but hidden from us because it shows a cataclysmic cycle that the governments in turn don't really want you to know about. Because if you all knew about it, then you wouldn't be able to prepare. And if we all prepared, then there's a chance we could actually do something about it. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm going to probably leave it for today. I kind of jumped into some interesting stuff there. But I wasn't, I kind of, had a hiccup there at the beginning with some of the stuff not working at the start. But yeah, I might be able to share one more thing with you guys here about the solar flares, which is pretty fun, if I can find it quickly. But yeah, if not, we'll show it on the next one. What it is basically is right here. We can show you one more screen share, and then we'll. Yeah, so basically, should be showing here. So this is basically solarham.net. This is where you can find a lot of this stuff. And what you can see is when we look at sunspots, we have a positive and we have a negative. And when these mix, they'll arc and they'll cause flaring, like these cool pictures. And when these things happen, that's what the solar flare is basically. And as you can see, we have a bigger one that was coming around here. And we can go into the classes, and it's an alpha class flare. And depending on which time of which flare we have, they can get very strong. And here it is. And this will basically show you your potentials of what you can get. So beta class, sunspot count. There's 4 sunspots right now. And they can tell you your percentage. So these are the percentages that I'm talking about: C class flare, M class flare, X class flare. So an M class flare is what we had the other day. It was on Monday, I do believe, and it shot off to the I guess west of the sun. And so the X class flare, it was an X class flare, and what hit us was an M class. So if we ever were to get to this X class flare section, we would have about 10 to 12 minutes before that flare would hit Earth. And then whichever side of the Earth it's hitting would be the side that would have basically all electronics, power stations would be shut down. The hydro lines would basically start on fire and start sparking. This happened in 1994 in Quebec. When they had a solar flare, and it caused a lot of damage to the transformer stations. And that's the interesting stuff we can expect from some of my news. So we're going to go a little bit of current events, and then I'm going to go off into some of the solar sciences and grand solar minimum stuff, and help people understand about what you need to do to properly grow food and survive, thrive, and yeah, and keep things going. Because in the end, grocery stores are going to be more expensive. We've already start to notice, over the winter time, I'm sure everybody's seen in their grocery stores that there's limited selection, or sometimes there's some things that are not there that normally would be there. And this is all part of the not only what's going on in the world right now, but it's also the fact that the growing seasons are so sporadic right now that like they had snowfall in the States before we did in some places. And they have tendency to have a longer growing season, and that can affect their crops down there. And when that affects the crops, that affects everybody. And that goes for a lot of things. So, by doing indoor gardening and stuff like that, and greenhouses, you can extend your seasons. I was able to grow outside, in Manitoba here till the last day that was really successful was basically November 11th and November 12th. And then it got down to like -15 in my they call them like tunnels. They're like little greenhouse tunnels that you build. And you put them over your box gardens, and you put poly over them and use like PVC pipes. I have some videos on this stuff on my Canadian Vegan Outreach channel on YouTube. And so if you can extend your growing season and keep, you could have planted stuff in August and you would have had another crop by November, basically. So it's a good way to extend our crops and, growing your own food. What's in it, the pesticides that weren't used and what was used because you grew it yourself. You get that satisfaction of growing. It's a lot of fun to grow too with people outside and your family and stuff if you got kids and stuff like that. And I hope everybody really enjoyed the show. Try to smooth things out for the next time now that I have the privacy settings up. I had a couple more windows set up there before, but I couldn't find everything, did it already. I hope everybody enjoyed the show, and put in the comments if you got questions or want to learn more about this kind of stuff. And I'll keep on trying to educate you guys on how to grow, survive, and thrive, and some current events about stuff we're going through. I don't know if I mentioned at the beginning, obviously I did receive that fine, and I'm going to be fighting it, and I'm going to be sharing that story with you guys the whole way. And any other things. I'm going to have an interview with Louis Weiss, the Reeve in La Broquerie, and he's helped me out with a lot of understanding common law and what's going on in the world. And if we can get together with people with like minds, we can really all fight for our freedoms and end up, getting Canada back to the reason I have a tattoo of the maple leaf on my back, something I was proud of before, and now I'm incredibly saddened to have on my back. I hope we can bring Canada back to where it was, and we got to get rid of Mr. Trudeau and his crazy ideas of socialism, and what they've done to our school systems, like Cohen's going to start talking about, and May's talking about. I saw the very tail end of that. I mean, I was one of the last grades to read 1984 in grade 9 by George Orwell. So, I mean, I like to think that, hopefully, some more people get out there and, do some education, read that book, see the similarities to what the government are doing now to, something that was written back then. These people tried to warn us about it. They were warning us about it in the 50s. They were warning us about it in the 30s. Our seniors and elderly people are warning us about it now. If anybody's coming over from, a European country, they know what's going on now. This collective think, this collectivism. It's scary. It's not about making other people happy. It's about making me and my family happy. Being kind and respectful to people, that's just natural. That's something everybody should do. If you don't know natural law, I encourage you people to learn about natural law, not these laws that the government has written on papers. It's the natural laws of this world that, really state who we are. And if you want to live to your full potential and your values and get out of this rat race. I hate to use that word, but this race that the government has turned things into. They control you. Turn that TV off. Find some educational stuff. Share it with other people. And I hope everybody enjoyed the show tonight. Andy, how's it going? Maybe he's not there. Yeah. So yeah, if not, then
Sorry.
you're there. Yeah. So how was that? Not too bad.
That was excellent. That was excellent. I love the natural law finish. That's why I was slow in the uptake. Me and Brander were just saying, "Oh, he said natural law. He's bringing it all together." We love that. We love that.
Yeah. Well, man, you guys introduced me to that, and watching that 9-hour seminar there on natural law was eye opening. It's a lot of stuff I was already learning, and to have somebody put it into a perspective that actually makes sense of where the world has gone. It was crazy to see that. So if anybody hasn't seen that, Mark Passio, yeah, check him out. He's really really awesome, and I've been finding out since I've been sharing clips from his videos that a lot of my other friends actually have heard of him too. So it's actually really cool that we all are into the same things, and these are what the world should be on, not these made up laws on paper that are just to control you.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Cool, man.
Well, on that note, I'll tie in a quick wham segue. As this weekend, probably in the next couple of days, we haven't decided for sure, we're going to show another Mark Passio presentation, and I pitched it this morning. We talked about it a little bit on Monday, but his presentation on decoding the matrix, which is all about looking at the natural law implications of that excellent film trilogy from the early 2000s, late 1990s. So people keep an eye out for that, learning more about natural law and Mark Passio's perspective on it. Really excited to show that for people this weekend. It's only about 2 hours and change, so it's shorter than, or the same length as one of the movies. So it's a good way to get the whole trilogy in just a couple hours. But on that note, I'll let you take us out, and yeah, great show, awesome information.
Awesome, guys. Yeah, thanks everybody for coming on the show. I hope you guys look forward to checking out my show I'm going to present for you guys. I hope everybody stays strong. Stay on the independent media channels, and get your cameras out, take photos, record, do citizen journalism. If you're driving past a COVID site, one of those COVID test sites, stop, take a picture. See how many people are there in the parking lot. If you're going past a hospital, do the same thing. We got to stay on the journalists right now. We got to keep pressuring, and I encourage everybody to get active and get out there, because if we want to be having Christmas again or New Year's or enjoy our summer at all next year, we got to start fighting now. We got to fight hard, because they're going to carry this into 2021, and we're not going to take it. So hope you guys all have a good night, and yeah, enjoy. And yeah, thanks for watching Web.